Hello everyone, James here. Welcome back to Bexhill West. Well, we've got a couple of items for today's video. We've got some work on the station canopies for Bexhill West, and we revisit the TMD building for Paul Apps's Sandling Junction. But first, some exciting news. Now, before we get into the meat of today's video, I wanted to share with you some news which is, for me, really quite exciting. Now, you may remember I mentioned in our last video that myself and Michael Audrey had been building a model of an Austrian castle. Now, this model depicts a particular battle that occurred at that castle right at the end of World War II. And the model was really built for display at the Salute 2020 War Games exhibition, which was due to have been held at the Excel Centre in London at Easter of this year. However, because of all the things that have been going on more recently, the event was postponed until next year, and so the final reveal hasn't happened, if you like. However, in the interim period, Michael's had an article about the project published in War Games Illustrated magazine, and a copy of that magazine arrived through my letterbox this morning. And I just can't help just sharing with you just quickly. There is some wonderful photographs and Michael's write-up of the project. If you're in your local newsagents and you see the magazine on the shelf, turn to page 100. It's quite nice. For me, it's very flattering. However, I can't take any of the credit for it. Michael wrote the article, took the photographs, and if you look at the model, everything that looks beautiful about it really is all Michael's work. He's a wonderful painter and an excellent model maker. However, I was still excited to see the magazine arrive through my door and see my name in print within it. Brilliant. Now, a couple of weeks ago I uploaded a video about the station platforms for Bexhill West, and within the video that I showed was an image of the station canopy, and at the time I said we'll come back to it later. Well, that station canopy drawing obviously attracted quite a bit of interest from the viewers, and I had several emails about it. So I thought today we'd revisit that design and I'd show you the development of my prototype for the station canopy itself. Now, this is just a short section and you'll see how it all goes together over the course of this video. I hope you find it interesting. So if you recall back to my previous video where I showed the 3D computer model of the station canopy, what you could see here is the laser cut fretwork of parts that I'm going to use to build a section of that canopy. If I zoom in, you can see some of the detail a bit more closely. And if we look closer still, we could see the slots and the tabs that have been incorporated within the components, so they should glue together easily and accurately. Let's see if that's the case. So jumping on a bit, I've taken two of the canopy sections that you've just seen me make. I've joined them together, and along the edges I've added a valance strip. Now that valance strip stops slightly short of the top of the canopy frame, and the idea is that I'll use something like this. This is a little bit too big, but a channel section to form a rainwater gutter along the top. Now obviously that's far too big, but when I've got the correct section I think that'll look fine. The canopy sections are joined in the middle here, and the idea is that the valance section, or the next one, will stick on here like so and form a connection between this canopy frame and the next one that I make. And let's turn that round. Something like that. And these valances, the depth of them, makes this thing tremendously strong. There's a bit of flex or twist across the frame that way, well, we would expect that, but along its length it's really very strong indeed. Now one of the great things about the cutting mat, of course, is that as I was assembling the thing I was able to lay it on the grid and check that everything's nice and square, and I'm pleased to report that the kit's gone together really well, so I'm quite pleased with that. So the question is, how successful has this endeavour been? Well, I'm quite pleased with it. At the moment I've just got it rigged up with some little sticks in lieu of the correct posts that I will eventually be fitting. Now the idea is that these columns will actually be made from a piece of brass brazing rod, and I'll 3D print the little castings where they flare out at the bases, the pedestals. I will also 3D print a little boss to sit on top of the columns. And my thinking is that I will be able to use the copper columns as conductors to run a positive and a negative power supply up to the canopy for the lighting and what have you. Now these columns, as I've rigged this up, are a little bit too high, but you get the idea. They sort of work. It's a bit of a job balancing it, and I found balancing it on 6 of these posts difficult enough, which is why I haven't put the others in the centre there. Anyway, I've also made, these aren't the finished things, these are just sort of cardboard mock-ups of the glazed canopy sections, and I'm unsure how to do these. These are at the moment just cardboard. I think they may end up being etched brass, and you can see that they will discharge rainwater into the gutters that will run along the top of the valances. Now an interesting thing which I didn't know was that the rainwater then discharged through downpipes which ran through the face of the valance and back to the columns, which were themselves hollow, and the rainwater discharged to drains in the bases of the columns. I've no idea how they were emptied or whether they ever blocked up, but I thought it was quite interesting. So when this is all finished, to each of these columns there will be fitted little drain pipes, just to give that idea. So another project which has been occupying my time this week is the roof structure for Paul's TMD building for the Ashford area of his model railway. And what you see is a fretwork of the roof trusses that will form the backbone of this structure. Now I've tried to incorporate each of the north light trusses into as long a fret as I can, and the idea is there will be 2 lengths of these which will make up the entire length of the shed. The idea being that it will be possible to remove half or both of the bits of roof to have a look inside. Now, these trusses are connected together by purlins, and the purlins have little notches cut in them which correspond with notches which I've cut into the trusses. So the whole thing should clip together nicely. Now this is a bit fiddly. But hopefully you get the idea. Something a little bit like that. So in this clip you could see me assembling the frames and gluing the purlins on. Now if you have a look, you'll see those two metal blocks. They're Engineers V blocks, and I find them absolutely great for doing this sort of work. They're really heavy, they don't move, and I've used a rare earth magnet to hold that truss which is furthest away from the camera up nice and tight and square to that metal block. So that holds that frame in, and it allows me very easily to get the glue on and assemble all the other frames. Now once a few of these purlins have been glued in place, then the whole structure starts to become kind of self-supporting and it holds itself square. Again, I'm making reference to the grids printed on the cutting mat to make sure that everything is aligned nice and square. It's very easy when gluing things like this for those trusses to actually be slightly out of plumb if we were, imagine, looking along the building. So I'm constantly looking from the side just to make sure they're nice and square. Now when I cut the purlins, I've made the slots just to have a little bit of clearance so they push together nicely, but you'll see me on occasions pick up my scalpel and use the handle of the scalpel as like a little tool just to press them in nice and firmly. I'm not putting any real pressure on there, and there's no danger I'm about to slip and slash my wrist. It's all quite under control. But that's something to bear in mind with a laser cut structure like this. If you make the slots, if you like, too tight, then sometimes it can be quite hard to press the pieces into place, and that can cause problems. In fact, I have made things like this before where I've made those slots so tight that the action of forcing them together does put a slight bow into the project that's being worked on. So I was mindful with this just to make sure that there was sufficient clearance. And of course the glue itself takes up any gap, so there's no need to make things totally tight. So if, for example, I think the purlins on this are 1mm thick, so I would probably make the slots 1.2mm, something like that. Anyway, it's all coming to an end now, and you've seen how quickly it's gone together. I've sped this film up by 8 times just so it doesn't get too boring to watch. So this whole process has taken 8 times longer than it's just taken me to talk about. So 15 minutes probably, something like that. Not too long, and you get a nice pleasing structure. Now then, in the spirit of Boo Peter, here's one I made earlier. So this is the second of the 2 frames that will make up the roof. You can see I've painted the trusses and the purlins a different colour. This can now have the roof covering applied and the north light windows added to the shorter of the 2 faces. And when the 2 are put together, we'll end up with a complete run of roof for the shed. And as I said earlier, we can lift one or both sections out of the building to drop a camera inside and take a photograph, which should look quite nice given all that detail. And I'm sure that by the time Paul has done his thing with weathering all of this, I'm sure it will look really, really good indeed. So I have in front of me the mock-up of the engine shed. Now none of this is glued together yet, it's still just sort of balanced, and again I'm using some of these Engineers V blocks just to help prop it all in place. However, what I wanted to show you was how the roof trusses are fitted into the model, and for that I'm using 2 sections of this plastic strip. Now the lower section is like a steel beam, and the top section I'm showing you is a channel, and when combined they fit into slots that I've cut into the side of the building where these valleys are. And the principle here is quite simple. The beam obviously is the structural element that holds the roof up, and then the channel section will form the gutter for these roofs. And so this structure will just drop in and be removable. So whilst we're looking at the shed, I have a number of these pieces which are yet to be painted and fitted. And these are just brick strips, which when they're painted will form the column detail to the brickwork on the outside of the building. Now these are in two lengths, so I have a longer one which will fit here, and then the shorter of the two fits to the brick wall inside, and the steel beam will come down and sort of bear on top of it, something like that. In this shot I've just quickly held in one of these brick columns. It's only held in with a magnet. The metal V block is behind, but that shows you the brick pier and how the steel will sit on top. And when this is all done and painted, the brickwork on this wall here will have all the mortar and everything put on and should resemble the brickwork on the front face that you can see there. If we look back here, you can see I've put the steel, the channel section in for the gutter, but I haven't yet underneath it fitted the supporting beam. And this shows the full extent of the shed. It's essentially exactly the same as the building that was at Bexhill West, except we've made this one a little bit longer because Paul wants to get lots of his locomotives stored inside. So there we are, we're at the end of the video now. Thanks for watching. I hope you found some of it informative and maybe some of it useful as well. Now, I see that we're at 192 subscribers, and that's so close to 200. I'm absolutely delighted, and thank you to everybody who has subscribed. Now normally in the video somewhere I hide a cheeky little subscribe Easter egg somewhere, but there hasn't been much graphics in today's video and I've not known where to put it, so I'm just going to ask you outright. If you haven't yet subscribed and you enjoyed what you see, then please consider doing so. It's a big bonus for me, and it's nice to know that you're enjoying the content. Anyway, coming up next week, we've got to return to some CAD work, and in the forthcoming episodes we're going to be looking at the history of the railway line that ran to Bexhill West, and we're going to look into 3D printing as well. So until next time, thanks for watching everyone. Bye bye.